Shri Radha Madhava ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Srila Bhagavad Gita ki jai. All glories to the Sammo devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, Shri Maharaj ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. We have Bhagavad Gita. Om Agyantimirandasya Ginandana Salakaya Chaksharam Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mahavistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Sutakatam Davati Swapadantikam Panchakalpalupya Sorry. Kamalam Sri Guru Vaishnava Sri Rupam Sagradatam Saganam Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijanam Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaganam Shri Vishakam Vitam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Tapta Kanchana Gaurani Radhe Vrindaveshwari Vrishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Sindhu Bhavacha Pachitanam Pavane Vaishnave Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Patay Mahatpiryama Pura Vibhur Nirmakshataya Namushpurusha Punte Gunan Sadasa Sadasa Makavan Krishishta Magavan Vachamsime Hare Krishna. So today we have overwhelming attendance after the retreat.
A few more are going to come.
Yeah. But maybe not today, right?
They'll come for Pushar.
They will definitely come sometime.
Who is coming?
Jason Prabhu is coming.
Anandini Prabhu is coming, and then there's another devotee coming.
Okay.
Divas Gopal Prabhu. I told you, he lives very close. I forgot.
Oh.
So we continue discussing one of of the key topics from Bhagavad Gita, which is personal life's mission. And yesterday we read from chapter 18, text 46, to today we will continue with the next, text 47. And chapter 18 is conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 1847, everyone has. Shayan Swadharma Viguna
Shayansa Swadharma Viguna
Paradharmat Svanushtita
Paradharma Svanushtita
Svabhavaniyatam Karma
Svabhavaniyatam Karma
Kurvannapnoti Kilbisham
Bhavnapnoti Kilbisham
Shayan Swadharma Viguna
Shayansa Swadharma Viguna
Paradharmat Svanushtita
Paradharma Svanushtita
Svabhavaniyatam Karma
Svabhavaniyatam Karma
Kurvannapnoti Kilbisham
Kurvannapnoti Kilbisham
Shayan Swadharma Viguna
Shayansa Swadharma Viguna
Paradharmat Svanushtita
Paradharma Svanushtita
Svabhavaniyatam Karma
Svabhavaniyatam Karma
Kurvannapnoti Kilbisham.
Kurvannapnoti Kilbisham.
Translation purport by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhakti Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. Purport. One's occupational duty is prescribed in Bhagavad Gita. As already discussed in previous verses, the duties of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra are prescribed according to their particular modes of nature. One should not imitate another's duty. A man who is by nature attracted to the kind of work done by Shudras should not artificially claim to be a Brahmana, although he may have been born into a Brahmana family. In this way, one should work according to his own nature. No work is abominable if performed in the service of the Supreme Lord. The occupational duty of a Brahmana is certainly in the mode of goodness, but if a person is not by nature in the mode of goodness, he should not imitate the occupational duty of a Brahmana. For a Kshatriya or administrator, there are so many abominable things. A Kshatriya has to be violent to kill his enemies, and sometimes a Kshatriya has to tell lies for the sake of diplomacy. Oops. Such violence and duplicity accompany political affairs, but a Kshatriya is not supposed to give up his occupational duty and try to perform the duties of a Brahmana. One should act to satisfy the Supreme Lord. For example, Arjuna was a Kshatriya. He was hesitating to fight the other party, but if such fighting is performed for the sake of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there need be no fear of degradation. In the business field also, sometimes a merchant has to tell so many lies to make a profit. If he does not do so, there can be no profit. Sometimes a merchant says, "Oh, my dear customer, for you I am making no profit." But one should know that without profit, the merchant cannot exist. Therefore, it should be taken as a simple lie if a merchant says that he is not making profit. But the merchant should not think that because he is engaged in an occupation in which the telling of lies is compulsory, he should give up his profession and pursue the profession of Brahmana. That is not recommended. Whether one is Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra doesn't matter. If he serves by his work the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Brahmanas who perform different types of sacrifices sometimes must kill animals because sometimes animals are sacrificed in such ceremonies. Similarly, if a Kshatriya engaged in his own occupation kills an enemy, there is no sin incurred. In the 3rd chapter, these matters have been clearly and elaborately explained. Every man should work for the purpose of Yagya or for Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anything done for personal sanctification is a cause of bondage. The conclusion is that everyone should be engaged according to his particular mode of nature he has acquired, and he should decide to work only to serve the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna. Shreyan Swadharma Vigna Paradharmat Swanushtitat Swabhavaniyatam Karma Kurvannatnoti Kudvisham. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. So, this is one of the important verses in Bhagavad Gita because it's almost exactly repeating the verse from the 3rd chapter, which speaks about the same thing. Shayan Swadharma Vigunan Paradharmat Sanushtitat. So it is beneficial. Shreya means beneficial, right? Shreyas and prayas, we know. Shreyas is long-term benefit, all-inclusive benefit, and prayas is immediate benefit for sense gratification, right? Which causes trouble later on. Short-sighted choice, that's prayas, right? But thoughtful decision, that's shreyas. And it is shreya, it is very beneficial. Swadharma, act according to one's own, do one's own duty, swadharma. And how the swadharma is defined, vigunan, according to the modes of nature. Of course, we're trying to transcend the modes, but how do you transcend the modes? How do you take out the thorn from your foot? Martha, how do you take out the thorn from your foot?
Krishna curses us.
Yeah, you chant Hare Krishna, all the thorns will come out. How do you take the thorn? Yes, by using another thorn. So you take the thorn with the thorn. So you transcend the modes using the modes. That's one of the secrets of Krishna consciousness. So by using the modes in Krishna consciousness, you become free from the influence of the modes. So the modes are creating different natures in people. And if we understand our nature and if we engage our nature in Krishna's service, this is how we can become transcendental. That's one of the key messages of Bhagavad Gita. And that's why Shastras and Srila Prabhupada explains that Krishna consciousness is synonymous to self realization. So we have to understand ourselves in order to understand Krishna. And not just spiritually. Before we understand ourselves spiritually, we have to understand ourselves materially. That's very interesting. And then engage that material nature in serving Krishna in the best way. And because for devotees there is nothing material, right? Everything is Krishna's energy, which should be used in Krishna's service. That's the difference between us and impersonalists or Mayavadis, right? Who deny everything material. Brahma Satya Jagan Mitya. This is what they say. Only spiritual is truth and material is false. But we don't say that. We say that matter dovetailed for Krishna becomes spirit. That's the transformational power of devotional service. And that's very, very strong message of Bhagavad Gita. And without understanding and applying this principle, no one can advance spiritually. So that's why I'm saying that unless we become professional in our Krishna consciousness, we will never impress professional people with the importance of Krishna consciousness. And unless Krishna consciousness is done professionally, there will be not much effect or benefit. You know, it will be layman's work. And yeah.
So what do you mean if unless Krishna is done professionally?
Professionally. Professionally means like Arjuna. He was professional fighter. And occasionally he was a Brahmana. In exile, for example, they played the role of Brahmanas. But this was not his nature. He was a Kshatriya. So this was his profession. And yesterday we've spoken about it. This was the reason Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight. Because
His nature.
yeah, he wanted to engage his profession in Krishna consciousness. So, you know, because otherwise, he was not engaging professionally in Krishna consciousness. And this is what Prabhupada wanted to see, right? And this is what he said was the 50% of his mission unaccomplished, which he wanted us to accomplish. So it is very important for us to understand that Varnashram Dharma means that Krishna consciousness is not just another religion, very kind of exotic and little strange religion, but actually the way of life. And in order to help people to understand Krishna consciousness, we need to show how it is manifesting in professional life, rather than just, you know, religion, which is something outside of people's lives, basically speaking, right? How much time people have for religions? Little time on Sunday, that's all. And so, how much you can advance spiritually if you just engage in the activity once a week. And you can see that that's a big hurdle even for the devotees, right? That most of the devotees, with very few exceptions, rare exceptions, are working for money. Of course, they can use their money a little bit for Krishna, but that's not real perfection. Perfection is, you know, not to get distracted at all by work, but actually act for Krishna professionally and benefit people, and then there will be no question of shortage of money. And this was the subject we've discussed. We mentioned at the last day of the retreat that the perfection of life for all people actually, and especially for devotees, is to have very well paid hobby. Something you love doing, and because you love doing that, you can do it very well, and because you do it very well, you are very nicely rewarded for that activity, and then you can dedicate it to Krishna. So that's the perfect package. And Arjuna did that because he loved archery. He enjoyed it. That's why he achieved huge results. And that's why Krishna wanted him to use archery for him in his service. So, and yet there is a hurdle. Because if someone has pure nature, like Arjuna, he was pure Kshatriya, right? So it was easy for him to define who he is, to discover himself. Or if someone is pure Brahmana, there is no doubt in one's mind, what's my nature, what I am enjoying doing. Or someone is pure Vaishya. I know one devotee, he is a very wealthy man, and he is doing business his whole life. And he told me that his first business transactions started in primary school. He was buying bubble gum wholesale and selling that to his schoolmates in retail. That means one is born Vaishya. No doubt, right? Etc. So, but these are very rare cases, right? That someone has very, very clear cut, pure nature. And that's why one doesn't have to struggle with self-discovery. Unfortunately, most people have mixed natures. And Bhaktivedipurna Maharaj jokes about mixed natures. He says, I want to instruct everybody as a Brahmana. I want to rule everyone as a Kshatriya. I want to make tons of money as Vaishya. And I want to take no responsibility for my action as Shudra. Get the best, you know.
Good for me.
Yeah. Get the cherries from all cakes. So to say, right? So, but yeah, jokes aside, it's a kind of serious challenge. If I have mixed nature, you know, it's hard to figure out who am I? And even materially, who am I? What to speak of spiritually? And we think it's an obstacle, but it's not, because Krishna knows what he's doing. That's the good news. And the best example of someone who had mixed nature, and yet this combination was so powerful that it accomplished the results no one else could accomplish, even with pure natures. Whom am I talking about?
Prabhupada.
Yes, Srila Prabhupada. He had mixed nature.
He was a Vaishya.
Yes, he was born in the Vaishya family, and that's why, you know, his father was in business, and that's why he was doing business most of his youth, right? But because it was devotee family, the Brahminical activities were very prominent.
Mm.
Deity worship, studying scriptures, etc. And Srila Prabhupada dedicated a lot of his time for Brahminical activities. And so two natures. And yet he had another facet which also manifested pretty strongly. That is Kshatriya facet in his nature. That's why he joined Gandhi's movement when he was a student, right? Rejected.
The administration
Huh?
of ISKCON, like the
Yeah.
administration of ISKCON is also very methodical,
Yeah.
quite church-like, like that. So it's not just from, yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Go. Sorry.
No worries.
She's Bengali.
Sorry to interrupt. Please forgive me.
Yeah, and you can see this Kshatriya rhetorics come through, right, in his speech all the time, in his books. Like, Krishna consciousness means declaring war on Maya, and we have to conquer the whole world with Krishna consciousness, etc., right? So, nobody knows where this came from, but he had three natures in one. And so, how do you, combine this Vaishya with Brahminical inclinations and with Kshatriya spirit? Seems to be impossible combination, right? But if you think about it, only this combination made possible for him to do what he did, right? Because you can see that his god brothers, very, very prominent, with very pure natures, like top level Brahmana and Vaishnava, coming from Brahmana and Vaishnava families. They went and they tried to do what Bhakti Saraswati wanted and failed. Right? Not much achieved. But when Srila Prabhupada tried, he established ISKCON using business model. Why? Because business model is sustainable. ISKCON was incorporated in 1966, right? So it is corporation, even though it's spiritual, but it is corporation. That's why you can see very clear corporate structure, right? Same standards all over the world, standardized approach, etc. And very uniform, even including dress and all.
And color.
And color, yeah. And of course, his Brahminical nature helped him to teach and preach and write and publish so many books. And if he wouldn't have the Kshatriya spirit, he would not be able to pull it through, right? Because he faced so many challenges, almost impossible challenges, but he didn't care. Like anyone who read Prabhupada Lilamrita knows how much he had to struggle, and the devotees had to struggle to get the land in Juhu. And after all was done, and Prabhupada gave the first class, he said, Krishna is very merciful. He gave us such a wonderful piece of land without any problems. And devotees were like, wow, what he is talking about. But, for Srila Prabhupada, it was not a problem. It was fighting for Krishna, right? Or like this Mr. What's his name, who was trying to cheat the devotees.
Missionary?
No, English, American,
Oh, yeah.
who was trying. Huh?
Solicitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, solicitor. can't remember his surname. Anyway, that he tried to cheat the devotees. He cheated them. He took $5,000, and then they contacted Srila Prabhupada, and they said, we're sorry, we didn't listen to you, and he cheated us. And Prabhupada said, take this matter into the court, I'm coming. And then he came and he was fighting with this in the court, and they got $5,000 back, but they've lost $200 something in court, fees. And then someone, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, I think, he came to Srila Prabhupada. He said, Srila Prabhupada, we're very sorry, we wasted your money and gave you so much trouble just because we didn't take seriously your instruction. We didn't listen to you. And Prabhupada, and we've lost effectively, 200 whatever dollars. And Prabhupada smiled and he said, don't worry. If you fight with the tiger, you don't count scratches. Scratches are not so important if you fight with the tiger. Right? So, for Prabhupada it was all fighting through. So very, very strong Kshatriya spirit he had. And he even said, I want to be like Arjuna, I want to die on a battlefield with my boots on. Which he did actually, right? Which is amazing. Even his departure was like Bhishmadev's departure, right? Until the last breath, translating Bhagavatam, giving Prabhupada's purports. So, amazing example, but this is a very vivid example for us that mixed nature, actually, it could even be better than pure nature. Because it gives you, if you have mixed nature, unique combination which you can engage in Krishna's service in a unique way which no one can imitate, right? And you can achieve something special. And the only thing is to figure it all out, how it all fits together. And that's why Srila Prabhupada was saying that devotees have to be trained to be independently thoughtful. Because independently thoughtful, first part is independent, means I am calling it material independence and spiritual dependence. That's the best formula. Material independence means I am not depending on other people for my needs. I can sort it all out myself. I have enough brain to do that. So for getting, I don't depend on anyone. I can provide everything for myself and for others as well. So that's material independence. I can organize, I can do things. But spiritual dependence means I have to have devotee association for my inspiration, for my guidance, to serve somebody, right? Because we all want to serve, and who are the better people to serve than devotees? So that's spiritual dependence. And so independently material and thoughtful means I understand that without sadhu sangha I will be lost, right? So sadhu sangha is very important, and whatever I do, I want to invest all my energy into making sure that I'm always in the best devotee association I can afford, right? So this is what it means to be independently thoughtful. And in order to give maximum benefit to the world and in serving Krishna, we really need to define who are we, what kind of nature we have, and how do we utilize that in the most powerful and positive way. All right, so that was the theory, and then what I wanted to do, because we'll be discussing that same topic. I think it is relevant and important topic. Everyone agrees?
Totally agree. As you were speaking, Maharaj, I was reflecting on many years ago. It's over 25 years ago. The first time I heard the principle of mixed nature was a devotee. He actually donated, he was an Iranian devotee, he donated the deities Gornitai to Coventry. And he was explaining how in his family, I heard the conversation, I was the edge of the conversation. And he was explaining how in his family is, because he'd done the analysis, mixed mode, combination of Brahman and Kshatriya.
Mm-hmm.
So I was listening to him explaining and reflecting, and ever since I've reflected on it. But this is the first real close encounter detailed explanation, because I think devotees do struggle with it. I've struggled with it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look back on my own life, I see how of all the sports that I took up, I can play cricket, I don't like cricket. I can play football, I don't like football. The only sport I like is martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
But yet my nature is also Brahmanical.
Mm-hmm.
It's also Kshatriya.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much Vaishya and trading, but
Okay.
learning that. So that principle has been there without any proper exploration. And unlike many devotees, we do struggle with it. What's the right fit? Am I doing the right thing? And also the anxiety that comes with it because it's not properly settled.
Sure.
I think it's very relevant.
Good. Thank you. Yes.
Can anyone be born a Brahmana? Because for being a Brahmana, you have to be knowledgeable and you have to have that knowledge to be able to guide. Because all babies are born like quite clueless, right? So.
Yeah, Brahmana means you have a very powerful nature of teaching and learning things, etc. I came across this kind of people.
So, scholars.
Yeah, very, very scholarly.
Okay.
In this age, Maharaj, it's said that everybody is pretty much a Shudra in terms of their nature, the nature of Kali. So how does that fit within the context of this verse?
Kalau Shudra Sambhava means everyone's born Shudra because most people, everyone means as a rule. There are a few exceptions, Prabhupada says, very rare. But as a rule means that people don't follow samskara. And without following samskara, everyone's born as Shudra. And so, but it doesn't mean that one cannot be reformed. Everyone can be reformed. Because only Shudras, they don't follow samskara in Vedic culture. But in Kali Yuga, hardly anyone follows any samskara. So that's why it says that everyone's born as a Shudra.
And in terms of the mixed natures, I really liked your analysis actually. It does put a lot of things into context. When Prabhupada first met Bhakti Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, before that he was not really had too much faith in the sort of saintly personality because of his experience with them due to his father inviting him. As soon as he met Bhakti Saraswati, the first instruction he gave was, you should preach this in this Hare Krishna movement,
In
philosophy in English.
Yes.
And that sort of stuck in Srila Prabhupada's mind. and pretty much govern the rest of his life. So, presumably, if you have mixed natures, if the spiritual master or senior devotees can guide one, that this is how perhaps you should behave or act, then that goes a long way to understanding what to do.
Yeah, this is very interesting episode because, you know, sometimes devotees think, you know, Srila Prabhupada got such a serious mission from his spiritual master. Why can't I get such a serious mission from my spiritual master? But, you know, in order to get this kind of mission, one has to already prove oneself. And so Prabhupada actually proved himself even before meeting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Well, because he was born in a Vaishnava family, he had very deep faith in the Lord, in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the first place, right? And because he came from Gaudiya Vaishnava family, right? And the only reason he was not interested in saintly persons because he saw so many imposters, right, in his childhood. And so he didn't want to again get discouraged by another imposter. But his friend said, no, this is the real thing, you know, come along. And Prabhupada came, and yeah, it was the real deal, as we say. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati immediately saw that Srila Prabhupada was dressed as Gandhi follower. And by, you know, his interest, he realized this is Gaudiya Vaishnava. You know, Gaudiya, who takes very active stand in social life. You know, responsible approach. You know, that he realizes that, okay, British are destroying Krishna consciousness in the country. So we have to get them out. And this was the nature of his question, right? How can we preach Krishna consciousness if we're what's that? Subdued nation or dependent nation, etc. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, Krishna consciousness is transcendental to all this, which, you know, like really put things for Prabhupada in perspective straight away, and he appreciated the depth of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's vision, etc. But immediately Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, you know, why don't you're educated young man, because they conversed in English. You're educated young man, you know English, why don't you preach Krishna consciousness in English? That was, you know, basically, he already defined his life mission by serving Krishna by resisting British materialistic influence, right? He saw that need, and he was addressing that already. And he took responsible stand. He was not waiting to be told, okay, you have to, you know, he had his own brain. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, actually, what he did, he lifted the same mission on transcendental level. You know, rather than physically or politically fighting with British, fight with them spiritually. Go to their homeland. They are trying to, you know, like colonize us here. You colonize them there. You know, cut them on the root level by giving them Krishna consciousness. And so, yeah, Prabhupada realized that. It's the same mission, it's, you know, my same nature, and this is my guru because he sees my nature, he understands what I want to do, and he puts that in perspective for me. And so that was it, you know, from the very first meeting, he realized, you know, this is the man whom I want want to serve, because we have exactly the same direction.
I think it is also like Bhakti Rasayana was not really his guru. He just went for a class or went because his friend took him.
Yeah.
I think it's his nature to accept it and assimilate it and imbibe it and take it through. I might take it frivolously, and I'm not saying I'm nowhere there, but maybe fine, I have to cook, I have to clean, I have to do this. He took it. That is also his greatness and his mercy that he had, right? So,
But he understood
yeah.
that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is his guru because he saw that he sees him through,
Okay.
and he engages him according to his nature. And that is what
He
Srila
felt the
Prabhupada
connection.
describes, that Guru is the one who knows the nature of the disciple and engages him accordingly in the service. That's Guru. Yes.
So when looking for a spiritual master, should we then wait to find the right one?
Yeah, of course. That should be, the description Prabhupada gives and Acharyas are giving should be matching to our situation. And so, then, coming back to our natures, even though most of us have mixed natures, but there is one core nature, which is the most prominent. And then other natures are meant to complement that. It's like main meal, and then you have some, additional stuff around it. So, and like Srila Prabhupada's main nature was Brahmana nature, nevertheless, and then Vaishya experience and Kshatriya spirit, that was to help to push that through, right? And so in the same way we have our natures, and it's important, and I think in professional language it's called key competence.
That's right.
And so, if we are to become professionally Krishna conscious, it sounds a little strange, but it is how it's supposed to be. Then, it's really important for us to define that, and then see how to engage that and use everything else to enhance that key competence. And so there is one very interesting exercise I wanted to suggest we do, and it's a little strange, but nevertheless it is in line with Shastric examples, that even though we're human beings, but still, every human has different nature, and that nature resembles some animal nature. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is addressing Arjuna, Purusha Vyagra, or tiger amongst men, right? So Krishna is comparing Arjuna to a tiger, because this is Kshatriya nature, very clear, right? Tiger, very strong and very aggressive animal. You don't mess with tigers. And devotees in Bhagavatam are compared to what kind of bird? Swans. And materialists are compared to crows. And in terms of insects, what insect devotees are compared to? Huh?
Bumblebee?
Yes, bees collecting honey. And materialists?
The flies.
Flies.
Oh.
So you can see that these kind of, comparisons or natures are pretty common. So we can understand it's a legitimate way to analyze one's nature, right? And so if you think about yourself, what kind of animal or bird or insect or fish or any species of life, what kind of living entity would come to your mind in terms of your nature? What kind of living entity's nature your personality type resembles the most? Who are you in this lifetime? What kind of animal are you?
Can we include dinosaurs and
Hopefully not, because they're only extinct.
I think I'm more like a bird. It's like more
Bird.
yeah. It's like when a bird.
Well, there are so many birds.
pigeon or
Um,
squid or something?
There are what? How many millions of 2 million birds?
Yeah.
You have 2 million choices. Are you eagle? Are you squirrel? Or not? Are you sparrow? What kind of bird are you?
Woodpecker.
I'm a phoenix.
Huh?
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Do they exist?
No.
Well, phoenix is kind of mystical bird.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, anyone can think of an animal or bird or fish or insect or whatever species of life.
I don't know what I am, but I was just today reading that horses are very spiritual, so that is something that I would aspire to be.
Okay.
So I'm cheating here.
So you think your nature resembles a horse?
No, that's what I would aspire to be. Only because I'm meant to be spiritual, but I don't really know what my nature is.
So you want to be a horse in your next life?
Well, if you think about it carefully, what your nature is resembling what species of life, what type of life, what kind of animal or bird or fish or another example is
Tree.
another example in Nectar of Devotion, right? That acharyas are compared to sharks, right?
Right. Yeah.
Etc. So there is a lot of those comparisons in scripture, and so applying to ourselves, because that definition could actually help you to define your key competence, could help you to define your core nature, which is very important because this is what you could rely on.
What if the spiritual masters already defined it for you?
Yeah, then that
Don't have to worry about it.
then that makes your job easier.
That's cheating.
It's the mercy.
So what are you?
You?
I don't know what I am.
I can't think of myself. As
Let's
any
say,
animal.
let's say we have found the animal. Then
You found the animal.
Undisclosed animal. Specimen A.
Actually, no, I'm really deep of pals.
So specimen A, he found his animal. He doesn't want to name it or disclose it.
It's okay.
Really deep.
Yeah.
Is it a monkey?
Gosh, I'm too planned. I don't know
So
how that
it's
animal.
you don't have to think about it because it comes subconsciously. Like if you ask yourself, "Who am I?" It kind of comes automatically, right? Should be coming automatically.
But sometimes you have to have the knowledge of the variety of this planet. But I think
Let's see the show of hands. You don't have to tell everyone, but let's see just the show of hands if you defined it for yourself. 1, 2, 3.
If you have defined it or defining it, you've defined
You
it.
already defined. You already know what kind of
Okay.
species of life
I
you
don't know the
resemble.
English name of the bird. We call it babui pakhi in Bangla. They make these exquisite nests and they are very busy all the time.
Okay. So others are struggling. Yeah. How many of you are struggling with it? Interesting.
Struggling but can't be
Not even like one type of animal comes to your mind.
So you will be a rabbit for now, I think.
Huh?
He might be a rabbit for now, but he'll change later. My little one, I'm saying.
No, the core nature doesn't change.
Oh, okay, then I don't know.
You'll always be a rabbit.
That's a rabbit.
Maybe a deer or a stork.
I think I'll be a sparrow.
Sparrow.
He's narrowing it down.
You got your teeth.
I like waking up early, in the morning, after the day, just being out, seeing like nature, and
Okay.
never stop moving out.
So, yeah, I think it's important that because you see, every species of life, they have their advantages and disadvantages.
Owls can see in the dark.
Huh?
Owls can see in the dark.
Owls can see in the dark.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Like, for example, dogs, right? That if someone thinks, oh, my nature is like dog's nature, right? And I don't want to be a dog, but, like, it looks like I have dog's traits. But dogs have advantages which are actually very powerful, right? Like dogs are very faithful servants of the masters, right? And I think Chanakya Pandit is listing the special qualities of the dogs which make them distinct from others. They are always alert, like, as opposed to cats, right? That cats, they like to sleep and relax, and they're very independent. But the dogs,
Not independent.
you can see that they don't have to wake like cats. They don't have to wake up like cats, right? As soon as they see or as soon as they hear some noise, immediately they're widely awake. They can immediately wake up, right? And they're fully ready for action. And some other, I think they can live very austere lifestyle. They can tolerate difficulty, like, can't remember, Chanakya Pandit lists like certain very powerful good qualities even dogs have. So every species of life has certain advantages over everybody else. And of course certain weak points. And so if you define your animal, you can say, then it will be easy for you to think what are the advantages I have of my nature. And if this species, well, this type of life has a motto, what would be that motto? That's an interesting question. Yes.
How do one get to know what sort of animals' instincts are with us, right? We wouldn't be able to specify it ourselves, but sometimes we feel, oh, I would rather be like bumblebee. Just an example, that I can go and fly and get the nectar from anywhere I want, the nectar that I really want. So how would we know that this is what I am? Or I can be very outspoken.
Yeah.
I would go and say, oh, this is not right, this is right. But according to me, that was right. According to the other person, it wasn't right. So what sort of quality is that? So how can we sort of define the qualities that we have without, I mean, how can we define it ourselves? We know what we are like.
Well, I think it's like narrowing it down. Like, first of all, am I an animal? Does it look like? Maybe not. Okay. Am I a fish? Am I a bird? Am I an insect? And then, you know, amongst those species, you can choose your type.
And perhaps if we can't define it, we can get guidance from somebody who's closer to us. Who can
Yeah.
guide us that, hey, perhaps this is your
Yeah.
nature, animalistic nature.
So we need to know the nature of a fish. We need to know, literally, to define ourselves.
We'll do a vote for you, Rasayana. Sorry, no, just joking.
Multiple choice.
Well-
surveymonkey.com.
Well, I mean, you know, if you don't want to tell anyone, you don't have to. But at least you have to tell yourself, right?
Telling someone.
There are like websites which they tell you which animal you are. They'll ask you the
Yes,
question.
who am I?
Okay, if you struggle, ask Suresh. He will guide you. He will help you to figure it out
Google it.
with the help of almighty Google.
Yeah, you're messing with some sites, you know, you give your date of birth, your name, and then
Yeah,
they'll
they
tell
tell
you
you.
some nonsense about you.
Yeah.
Accurate, though. Strangely accurate.
No.
Pussy boots, what do they say?
That's exactly it. They're not in the same word.
Oh, but it's the same.
Okay, so still some of you struggle.
Yeah, I'm struggling.
Sorry, you're a cat. I decided.
Yeah, I like.
I think you're a tree.
Me.
Yes,
Can't be moved too many times.
You're as tolerant as a tree, Mom.
No, I don't think I'm tolerant enough. I scream every single day.
Only once a day?
Multiple times. Sometimes after long periods of time.
All right, how many of you are still struggling? 1, 2, 3,
Some you are a
4,
cat
5.
for sure.
Yeah, but I like fishes more.
Shut up about what you like. You are like a cat.
If you're good at
You
swimming,
remember
would
the
you be a
first day of
fish?
school?
Does it matter on your material skills as well?
He has to figure out.
Do your material skills affect it? So if you're
Well,
good at
fish can have a lot of skills.
like swimming,
Not only swimming, like sharks. You know, they're pretty
Aggressive.
powerful
Yeah.
fishes. Or, yeah, there are so many fishes.
I think I'm a flying
Different
fish.
types of fishes.
flying.
The life is much more variegated in the water than on the land. You have all types of aquatic animals. Yeah, just meditate on this and ask yourself, who am I in terms of nature? What kind of animal resembles my nature? And see what comes automatically to your mind. Don't
Mama's,
try
if
to...
I do that and I die in the process, I'm gonna be the animal.
That's a scary bit.
Well, just tell Krishna, I don't want to be that, but I want to use that nature for service.
So that nature sort of we can take with us.
Huh?
That nature we can take with us.
Take
when
us,
we die,
take
in
it
the
with
next,
us.
yeah, in the next body, we can take that nature that we have now with us. Is a subtle body.
No,
No?
because if you use your nature in Krishna's service, it purifies.
Yeah.
It purifies your consciousness. But if you don't, then you get stuck with it.
So after having identified the animal, then what do you do?
Identify, like the life's mission of that nature, of that animal. Like, what would be the motto of that particular species of life?
Just keep to it.
And what are the, strong qualities of that animal, and what are the weaknesses? So, and then you can understand what kind of environment that nature can function the best in. And then you can understand, in which direction you can move in your life. It's basically, to help you to understand what is your motto, what drives you, what inspires you the most, what's your life's mission, what you were born for. Let's see if anyone can answer this question. What's your main mission in life?
Fascinating.
It's just one word, maybe. Like, if you ask me, what is my one word? That is justice.
Can we have 4 words?
Hmm?
Can we have 4 words?
4 words.
Well,
Okay.
my spiritual master, and this has really defined my nature. Take Krishna, give Krishna.
Take Krishna, give Krishna. But still,
Generosity.
how do you take Krishna and how do you give Krishna? So, ideally, it should be one word which gives very clear cut definition.
For me, it's love.
Love.
Yeah.
Okay.
To who?
Surprise at the face of this person. What?
Yeah.
Love?
Okay, anyone else?
I'm reflecting, or I'm being quietly reflecting, because when I think of all the things that I've done, and also didn't want to interrupt when you're speaking about the connection between the Prabhupada and Bhakti Siddhanta, I was just reflecting the connection between myself and my Guru Maharaj when I first had my one-to-one conversation with him. And then what you've just said now lines up. It is justice. It's very significant for me. And it was the commitment to fighting injustice that linked me with my Guru Maharaj.
Mm-hmm.
Very big things. And just to say a little bit more, give a little bit more detail. When I came from, it was a very tough time in the 60s when the Caribbean people came to UK. Although we were invited as part of the British colony, but racism was very open and hostile. And I came here as a 9-year-old, And from primary school, it was just open. The racism was just so open. The teachers were just openly racist, never mind the community. So as soon as I got to about 17, I then discovered that, yeah, politics, I need to fight this injustice. And that's been a thread all the way through, from about 17-year-old all the way through.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Forgiveness.
Huh?
Forgive.
Forgiveness. Okay, good. Anyone else? What's your word?
Interesting.
Interesting. Or interest.
No, more exciting than just, yeah, more fun.
Fun.
That's the word.
Good.
Fun. Yeah.
Okay.
Fun is his word.
Okay.
I think inspire, because a lot of times I go out on books and meet lots of people are just, it's like they're looking for something, and it's like they need some inspiration, it's like they hear something from Bhagavad, it's like,
So what's the word?
inspire?
Huh?
Inspire?
Inspire. Okay. Okay, good. Peace. Okay.
I agree
Good.
with that, yeah. And we'll write in our
Love and
family.
peace family. Love, peace, fun.
It doesn't exactly describe our family.
Hey, you.
Love, peace, fun. What about Sumanshu?
I'm not sure yet.
Not sure yet. Okay. Think about it. All right. You can think about it. Anyone else?
Help.
Help. Okay. Service, right? Good.
For me, it had to be love as well.
Huh?
Sorry, for me, it would have to be love as well. Love.
Love.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Caring
Care.
about others.
Care. Very good.
Oh, sustain.
Sustainability. Wow.
Gosh. Come from plastic session, I think.
That came from you telling me to get good GCSEs to get a good job to sustain myself.
All right.
We will be sustained. Thanks to Samanshu.
And yeah, it's also important to analyze how effective we are in the eyes of other people, how much impact we make, right? Because our effectiveness depends on that. And let's have one fun game that you can describe someone, positive characteristics of a person, and others should guess who is described. Right? Without naming the person.
In the room or?
Yeah, in the room.
In the room.
Yeah. Otherwise it will be very
That's my
difficult.
favorite
And is the
debate.
idea
Anjali.
we're saying in a way that fits that person's characteristics, so everybody should recognize that person.
Yeah.
As that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I can start while you're thinking. So this person is very thoughtful and very sweet and very nice musician and singer, and very good organizer, and has very sweet nature. And he likes to travel a lot.
Never heard you play.
But
Yeah. That was a bit too obvious.
Anyone else wants to try?
This person is 21, blonde hair. No.
Not in this.
Oh, oops. I meant white hair. No, gentle, caring, very loyal, supportive, kind. Come on, guys.
Maharaj.
No. He is, yeah.
Who is that?
Jenny.
Huh?
Jayanti Mataji.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll be dead.
Okay. Anyone else wants to try?
Everyone should be able to tell, right?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, this one's really energetic, scary. No.
Positive.
Yeah.
Energetic and scary.
No, I should take that back. I'm just gonna change it now. Okay.
Is that you're gonna change it to a different person?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that was mum anyway.
Yeah.
Energetic and scary defines mom. This is bad. I have to do something.
This one is also energetic, and this one is good at Harinam.
Oh gosh.
It can be loads of people.
Go on, keep going.
Jason, right?
Something more
Energetic and
specific.
Harina.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jason.
Something more specific
Mm.
to help people recognize whom you're talking about.
I said Jason.
He said energetic and
Can't be more specific than that.
This person is very gentle and very helpful, and he does a lot, but usually doesn't come out as obvious that he's doing so much under the scenes, behind the scenes.
Dad.
Yeah.
Samanchu.
Very quiet, no one knows what he's doing. Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes.
Good.
Acha, this person loves music, and he sings. He's very helpful.
Chumachu.
I'll let him finish.
He gives me lessons in music. I was thinking he'll add that.
He did. I learned some with him.
Alright. Anyone else?
Wait, that's a big bad quality.
Huh?
Dad.
I'm joking.
Yes.
This is the person who is quite forceful. It's quite inspiring. Goes out on his own. And that's Harinam, good distribution.
Jason.
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 Oh,
Jay.
Yeah, actually inspiring. He's always been our inspiration, taught us quite a bit. Very accommodating, very giving. Give us quite a bit. Very good planner. And very learned. And whatever he learned, he shared with us. whatever Guru Maharaj said. And when I asked, when we were going through difficult period when I first came in, and I said, what if I leave? If I leave? He said, no, go and speak to Nabi. He will make sure he will never leave. When people were moving on. And yeah, I just went to Guru Maharaj and I said, that is soon after my initiation. I said, Maharaj, I'm scared now. And he said, don't, you got Nabi. And he will make sure that you stay in ISKCON. And since that day, Nabi became my Shiksha Guru. And anything I used to ask him, he directed me quite nicely everywhere. Even when we went through troubles, he was very inspiring to us and to our family. And so I can say that Nabi has given us, or given me, even though he's my brother, but not because of my brother, because how we did devotional service, how we worked together. We had ups and downs, but yet he supported me and I supported him. So we were like Maharaj used to say, we are three brothers and sisters in three different bodies, but we are one soul. Always said that because our thinking is sort of alike. We are hard workers, we are very hard workers is what I will say, sorry, but I will say that. Plus, we do forgive easily. We have soft heart, even though the exterior is a bit hard, but we have soft heart, and we learn easily, and we try to bring people in, even though don't feel comfortable sometimes. But yeah, but my Guru Maharaj had great respect for Nabi.
Haribo.
He has inspired me and our family when the children were young. Teaching the children as well in the kitchen, and they were about that age, 7, 8, and he would say, no, you have to be clean. You have to do 4 rounds before you come in the kitchen. You have to do this, you have to do that. Discipline, 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 discipline. So the boys, when they grew up, even now they are very disciplined. And they were so disciplined by him that they were not scared of Guru Maharaj, because our Guru Maharaj was very strong and powerful. And they actually would do anything without, even they do it without fear. So this is what we got from, and my father was something like him. So we actually were given so much that we didn't have fear. Oh, I won't be able to do this. We would step in and do it. Whether we are thrown in the deep ends, like I was thrown in the deep ends when I first got initiated by Guru Maharaj. I got initiated in the following week. I had to do Saturday 9 in the evening, 9 in the morning to 9 in the evening. So I had to do all the services. Didn't have a clue how to do it. And obviously, I said, I did it. I went home, and Maharaj asked me a few questions. I answered a few questions. The following week, he stayed in the temple in that evening and showed me personally how to cook Rajbhog, how to do the worship, and eventually he gave me all the instructions. You are going to do this, you are going to be part of this and this. And I used to say, Maharaj, I'm not capable. No, you are capable. Just like your brother, you are just as capable. And that was the inspiration I used to get. And then last thing was Abhishek. And he was strong and I was weak. He just held my hand and gave me the conch shell and said, do it. And the conch shell nearly fell. But, and that was the instructions that he gave. And everything we went, I used to go to his ashram 10 days and learn things from him. Chastisement was there all the time. but the improvement was great. And I always feel I'm so grateful. And I am so grateful that before Maharaj passed away, I asked for forgiveness of all my offenses. Maharaj, he was there with Maharaj. So, and I feel so happy. And before we went in March, April, March, and Maharaj, and we didn't even expect Maharaj in Vrindavan. And the next thing Krishna Prem phone said Maharaj is in Vrindavan. And we were traveling. And Maharaj asked me if I wanted to go to Haridwar with him. But my health wasn't good. So I said, we went. And I said, Maharaj, I can't do it. Okay, you are coming with me to Gokul and Dauji. And that was my last connection with him, last association with him.